55% of the calories Americans eat come from ultra-processed food. Frozen dinners with ingredient lists longer than a medieval tax record. Microwave meals engineered in laboratories by food scientists whose job is to make you eat more, not eat better. The average American spends over $300 a month feeding themselves, and more than half of that goes to products their great-grandparents would not recognize as food. Meanwhile, a medieval peasant fed an entire family on 3 ingredients per meal. Not because they were primitive, because 3 ingredients was all it took when the ingredients were real. Today, I'm going to show you 15 forgotten medieval meals, each made with 3 ingredients or fewer, that kept working families alive through winters, famines, and plagues. Meals so effective that modern nutritional science is only now confirming what peasants figured out 800 years ago with nothing but a cauldron and a fire. Number 1. Peas pottage. The meal that fed all of England. Take dried peas, water and salt. That is the entire recipe. Medieval peasants soaked dried field peas overnight, then simmered them in water over a low fire for hours until the peas broke down into a thick, creamy mass. A pinch of salt finished it. This was not a side dish. This was dinner, lunch, sometimes breakfast. English manorial records from the 13th and 14th centuries list peas as the single most consumed legume among the labouring class. And for good reason. Dried peas contain over 20 grams of protein per 100 grams dry weight. That is more protein per weight than most cuts of beef. The slow cooking broke down the complex starches and neutralized the lectins that make raw legumes difficult to digest. A 2019 study from the University of Bristol, led by Dr. Julie Dunn, chemically analysed medieval cooking pot fragments from the village of West Cotton in Northamptonshire. The researchers used organic residue analysis to extract food signatures from pottery shards buried for over 500 years. The residue inside those pots confirmed what historians suspected. Legume-based pottages were the foundation of the peasant diet. For your kitchen, this means a bag of dried split peas, a pot of water, and salt. Cost: about $2. Cooking time: 2 hours of simmering you can ignore. The meal that built medieval England costs less than a fast food coffee. Number 2. Bread and dripping. Walk into a medieval farmhouse after the autumn slaughter, and you would find rendered animal fat stored in crocks near the hearth. When a peasant needed a fast meal, they spread that fat on a thick slab of bread and ate it with their hands. Bread, rendered fat, and a pinch of salt. The fat provided concentrated calories and fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K that the body cannot absorb without dietary fat. A single tablespoon of beef tallow contains around 115 calories and virtually none of the industrial trans fats found in modern margarine. Modern nutritional science, particularly research published in the British Medical Journal in 2015, has confirmed that natural animal fats are not the health threat we were told they were for 50 years. The real threat turned out to be the ultra-processed seed oils that replaced them. Medieval peasants never had that problem. They rendered fat from the animals they raised, spread it on bread they baked, and moved on with their day. Number 3. Frumenty. The wheat porridge the entire continent relied on. Whole wheat, water and milk. That was frumenty. You took cracked or whole wheat grains, boiled them in water until they burst and softened, then finished the dish with milk. Recipes for frumenty appear in nearly every major medieval cookbook, from the form of curry compiled for King Richard II around 1390 to Le Ménagier de Paris from 1393. Wealthy households added saffron, eggs and sugar. Peasants ate it plain, and the plain version was arguably better for them. The slow boiling of whole wheat grains preserved the bran and the germ, delivering fibre, B vitamins and minerals that modern roller-milled flour strips away. For your breakfast, Frumenty translates directly to what we now call whole grain porridge. Buy hulled wheat berries, simmer them for 45 minutes, add milk. You have just made a meal that sustained European civilization for 6 centuries. Number 4. Cabbage pottage. The vegetable stew you could make with your eyes closed. Cabbage, onions and water. Chop the cabbage, slice the onions, throw both into a pot of water and let it simmer until soft. The formula of Curie includes a recipe for cabbage pottage almost identical to this. Cabbage was the single most common vegetable in the medieval garden because it grew in poor soil, survived frost, and stored for months in a root cellar. A single cup of cooked cabbage provides more than 50% of your daily vitamin C and is loaded with fibre, vitamin K, and anti-inflammatory compounds called glucosinolates. Researchers at Wageningen University in the Netherlands have shown that brassica vegetables like cabbage have measurable anti-cancer properties at the cellular level. Medieval peasants did not know the chemistry. They knew that cabbage grew everywhere, lasted forever, and kept their families standing through winter. That was enough. Number 5. Bean pottage, the protein source that made meat optional. Dried fava beans, water and onions. Fava beans were the dominant legume in medieval Europe. They grew in nearly any soil, fixed nitrogen back into the ground, and dried to a state where they could be stored for years without spoiling. Per 100 grams cooked, fava beans deliver about 7.5 grams of protein, nearly 8 grams of fibre, and significant iron, magnesium and folate. A medieval family could feed themselves from a single sack of dried beans for weeks. A study published in the journal Legume Science in 2022 reviewed the nutritional profile of fava beans and found them comparable to or exceeding modern soy in several amino acid categories. The peasants who relied on bean pottage as their primary protein source were not suffering. They were getting a more complete nutritional profile than most Americans get from a drive-through window. Number 6. Sops. The zero-waste comfort meal. Take stale bread, pour hot broth over it, and eat. That is sops. From the 5th century through the 15th, sops were one of the most common meals in Europe. Stale bread was never thrown away. It was soaked in whatever liquid was available, whether that was meat broth, vegetable stock, or even warmed ale. The bread softened, absorbed the nutrients and fat from the broth, and became a filling, calorie-dense meal. This was the original no-waste cooking. Every scrap of bread served a purpose. Every leftover liquid became a vehicle for nutrition. The concept was so universal that the word sop shares the same Germanic root as our modern word soup. Modern food waste in the United States runs at roughly 30 to 40% of the entire food supply, according to the USDA. That is over 130 billion pounds of food per year going to landfills. Medieval households operating on 3 ingredients could not afford to waste a crumb, and they designed meals specifically to prevent it. Number 7. Oat porridge. The breakfast that powered manual labour. Oats, water and salt. Pour oats into a pot of boiling water, stir until thick, add salt. Medieval labourers ate this before dawn and worked in fields until sundown. Oats deliver about 13 grams of protein per 100 grams dry, along with beta-glucan fibre that modern research from the Lund University in Sweden has linked to improved cholesterol levels and long-lasting satiety. The key is that medieval oats were not instant. They were whole or steel cut, which meant slower digestion, steadier blood sugar, and energy that lasted hours instead of spiking and crashing within 45 minutes like modern processed cereal. A canister of whole oats costs under $4 and lasts a week. Your box of brand name breakfast cereal costs $5 and lasts 3 days. The medieval peasant's breakfast was cheaper, more filling, and better for your blood sugar. The chemistry has not changed in 800 years. The markup has. Number 8. Turnip pottage. The root vegetable stew modern supermarkets forgot. Turnips, water, and onions. Turnips were one of the most important root vegetables in the medieval garden. They grew fast, survived frost, and stored for months in cool conditions. The form of curry includes a recipe for turnip pottage that calls for diced turnips parboiled and then simmered in broth with onions. 1 cup of cooked turnips provides just 34 calories, but delivers vitamin C, fibre, and potassium. For peasants, turnips were the calorie bridge between harvests. When grain was low and meat was scarce, turnips filled the gap. Modern supermarkets barely stock them anymore because turnips cannot be processed, flavoured, and resold at a 300% markup the way a potato can. Number 9. Maslin bread and cheese. 2 foods that together form a complete protein. Maslin bread, which was made from a mix of wheat and rye, plus a slab of hard cheese, plus water. That was a standard midday meal for field labourers. English manor records describe this as the ploughman's lunch, eaten in the fields during the workday. The wheat-rye combination created a more complete amino acid profile than either grain alone. Adding cheese supplied the remaining essential amino acids that grains lack, particularly lysine. Modern reconstructions of Maslin bread recipes show significantly better moisture retention and mould resistance than pure wheat bread. The medieval peasant's lunch was nutritionally complete, shelf-stable, required no refrigeration, and cost almost nothing. Your sandwich from the deli counter costs $12 and was made with bread containing 25 ingredients. Number 10. Leek and barley stew. The healer's meal. Leeks, barley, and water. Medieval herbal texts consistently recommend leeks for respiratory ailments and digestive trouble. Barley was considered the most digestible grain, often given to the sick and the elderly. The combination simmered into a thick, nourishing stew that served as both food and medicine. Modern research has confirmed that leeks contain inulin, a prebiotic fibre that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Barley's beta-glucan fibre supports immune function and lowers cholesterol. A study published in Nutrition Reviews by Oxford Academic confirmed that whole grain barley and oats produce measurable improvements in heart health markers and gut microbiota composition. Medieval peasants gave leek and barley stew to sick family members centuries before anyone understood what a prebiotic was. Number 11. Herb pottage or Wortes. Foraged greens, water and salt. Medieval peasants gathered wild edible plants from fields, hedgerows and forest edges. Nettles, dandelion greens, sorrel, wild garlic and chickweed all went into the pot. These were boiled in water with salt to make Wortes, the simplest and cheapest meal a peasant could produce. The cost was zero. The nutrition was extraordinary. Wild greens typically contain 2 to 10 times the mineral content of cultivated vegetables. Nettles alone contain more iron per gram than spinach. This was a meal that required no land, no rent, no seeds, and no permission from a landlord. It came from the earth for free. The fact that modern grocery stores charge $6 for a bag of pre-washed salad greens that were picked 2 weeks ago and shipped across the country should tell you everything about what we traded away. Number 12. Egg drop broth. The fastest hot meal in the medieval kitchen. Boiling water or broth, an egg and a pinch of salt. Crack an egg into simmering broth, stir, and you have a protein-rich meal in under 2 minutes. Variations of this appear across medieval European cooking, from English households to Italian kitchens, where it survives today as stracciatella. Chinese cuisine developed the same concept independently, which tells you something about how fundamental this combination is. A single egg delivers 6 grams of protein, all 9 essential amino acids, and significant vitamin D, choline, and selenium. Medieval families who kept even a few chickens had access to one of the most nutritionally complete foods on Earth. The meal took less time to prepare than it takes to microwave a frozen dinner, and it contained exactly 3 ingredients, all of which a peasant could name. Number 13. Bread and ale soup, also known as ale berry. Stale bread, warm ale, and a dash of honey or salt. The bread was crumbled into warmed ale and eaten as a thick porridge-like meal. This was a common breakfast and evening supper across medieval England and northern Europe. Ale in the medieval period was not the carbonated drink we know today. It was a low-alcohol, nutrient-rich fermented grain liquid brewed in nearly every household. The fermentation process created B vitamins, particularly folate, and made minerals from the grain more bioavailable. A 2023 study published in Foods Journal confirmed that yeast fermentation of oats produced a net folate increase of 120 nanograms per gram after just 24 hours. Medieval peasants were eating fermented grain meals every day without knowing the biochemistry. They just knew it kept them standing. Combining fermented ale with bread created a calorie-dense, easily digested meal that doubled as a probiotic delivery system. For the modern equivalent, think of it as a fermented grain bowl, centuries before the concept existed. Number 14. Rendered fat and root vegetables. Turnips or parsnips, lard or tallow, and salt. Peasants sliced root vegetables and cooked them in rendered animal fat over a low fire until soft and caramelized. The fat increased calorie density dramatically and made fat-soluble vitamins in the vegetables absorbable. This was a high-energy winter meal that could be prepared in a single pot with no special equipment. Parsnips in particular are high in potassium, fiber, and folate. Cooked in animal fat, they become one of the most nutrient-dense simple meals you can make. The entire concept of cooking vegetables in healthy fat has been rediscovered by modern nutritionists, who now recommend it as the optimal way to absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K. For your kitchen, this is the simplest winter meal you can make. 1 root vegetable, 1 fat, 1 seasoning. Done. Number 15. Honey water with bread. The simplest meal on this list and perhaps the most revealing. Bread, water, and honey. Peasants who could access even a small amount of honey would dissolve it in water and dunk bread into the mixture for a quick, energy-dense meal. Honey has a pH between 3.2 and 4.5, making it naturally antibacterial. It has an extremely low water activity, typically below 0.6, which means bacteria cannot survive in it. It does not spoil. Not in years, not in decades. Archaeologists have found edible honey in Egyptian tombs over 3,000 years old. A medieval peasant with a jar of honey had a shelf-stable sweetener, a wound treatment, a preservative, and a meal ingredient all in one. The average American now consumes 77 grams of added sugar per day, most of it hidden in processed foods. That sugar provides calories and nothing else. No enzymes, no antibacterial properties, no vitamins, no minerals. Just empty energy designed to make you want more. The medieval peasant's honey did the opposite. It provided energy and protected health at the same time. Now step back and look at what these 15 meals have in common. Every single one uses whole, unprocessed ingredients. Everyone can be prepared in a single pot over a single heat source. Everyone costs less than $2 in modern purchasing power. And everyone delivers more nutrition per calorie than the average ultra-processed meal you can buy at a grocery store today. Medieval peasants did not use these meals in isolation. They rotated through them based on season, availability, and what the garden produced that week. Peas and greens in spring, cabbage and turnips through autumn, bean pottage and oat porridge through the long winter months, foraged Wortes whenever the hedgerows provided, eggs and bread when the hens were laying. The system had built-in redundancy. If the pea crop failed, beans carried the protein load. If meat was scarce, eggs and cheese filled the gap. If grain ran low, root vegetables bridged the distance to the next harvest. No single failure could collapse the entire system. Compare that to modern dependence on a supply chain where a single disruption, a trucker shortage, a port closure, a processing plant shutdown, leaves supermarket shelves empty within days. We traded a resilient system for a fragile one. We traded meals a peasant could name for ingredient lists you need a chemistry degree to read. We traded 3-ingredient suppers cooked over a fire for frozen dinners containing 30 additives and costing 4 times as much. The real difference between a medieval peasant and a modern consumer is not access to technology. It is possession of knowledge. A medieval family knew how to turn 3 ingredients into a meal that sustained life. Most of us have forgotten how.